Hi there, it's Donna from Taffy Crafting. I've got lots of stamping today, no DSP, which makes a massive change for me because I tend to use more paper than I would use actually stamping. So no paper today, it's just card, stamps, ink, a nice sentiment on some shapes. And I'm just going to change the colourway just very slightly for the card that I'm going to show you. I have to say, I did get in a bit of a mess making this because you kind of stamp off the card and then with this darker green, it gets all over my fingers. I have just washed most of it off. But it just gives a really nice effect and it's really satisfying stamping. So let me show you how I did this. I started off with just an ordinary card base. So that measures 4 1/8 by 5 7/8. So my card, I started off with 8 1/4 by 5 7/8 and scored down the middle at 4 1/8. So there's my card base. And I've got a piece of old olive. For this one, I use garden green. For this, I'm using old olive, and you need a bit of scrap for the sentiment as well. So this measures 4 inches by 5 3/4. I'm not going to stick that on there yet because I want to stamp this first. And this measures 3 7/8 by 5 5/8. All of the measurements are on my blog, so if you want to check them, then please do. Now the stamp set that I'm going to use is To a Wild Rose. I don't use this all that often, and I'm just going to use the leaves. Yeah, just going to use the leaves. So I need some old olive ink and Pear Pizzazz. They're very similar, but I'm going to use the Pear Pizzazz for the ink and the old olive for the veins of the leaves. So there's my piece of white paper, and I'm going to start with, let me show you what stamps I've got. So I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to use this one as well. So this one is going to be in the Pear Pizzazz. So just lightly tap your stamp into your ink pad, and I start by coming off the paper rather than starting here. So don't feel like you've got to get them all in, because that wouldn't, if like for instance, if you have wallpaper, the print goes off the edge of the paper, doesn't it? Does that make sense? So I'm just going to start here like that, so that coming into the corner. And I'm just going to go along here like this and turning the stamp as I go along. That's my first row of stamping. Second row, again turning the stamp and just bringing the stamp in a little bit. Just want to avoid uniformity. I don't want it to look like a row of leaves. When I first started doing this, I was just overthinking it, just all the time overthinking. And you can hover your block over and then just get the right position and then stamp it down. And sometimes you end up with gaps like this, and I used to really worry about it, and I'd start again. It's like, don't need to. Just don't need to. Just don't worry about it not being uniform. You've got to try and cover the gaps as much as you can. So do that on the inside first, matching up the, fill in the gaps, and then you can just put some stamps on the around the outside. But what I'm trying to do is not to get, oh goodness me, any of these stamps going in the right direction, in the same direction. And the best bit of advice I can give you is don't overthink. Just get your ink block down. This is my second project this week where I've used leaves. I've got another project coming for, I filmed so much stuff in advance, I don't know where I am. I've got a project for Sunday coming up with leaves where I've been inspired by the Artful Stamper, and now I've just been stamping everything. I'm going to turn this right around there and get those leaves in there. So there we go. And because of the nature of that stamp, it just gives it some texture. Actually looks like a leaf. So we're going to use this in the slightly darker ink, and Old Olive is just slightly darker. And this stamp matches that stamp. So we're just going to put some veins, just fill in the veins of the leaves. You don't have to, you could leave that there. I'll tell you, I've just seen something that I'm not happy with. I've got this little gap here. I need to do something about it because it's bugging me. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. I'm going to do that. Yeah, and now I'm just going to leave it. Okay, so with this one, we'll get the Old Olive out. And the great thing about photopolymer stamps is that you can see through the block and you can see through the stamp and you can see where it's going. So just take a second just to make sure you're happy as to where it's going. Now, what I think I need to do with that is stamp off. So rather than inking up straight in, stamp off once. And let's see what it looks like. I have to keep turning this round. Yeah, much better with it stamped off. That's much better. That's too much. But I'm still going to keep it there. I'm not going to ditch it. Right, so I'll get round these. It's a bit boring to watch. I'm just going to keep going. But you do have to lower the stamp down carefully just to make sure that you get it as exact as possible. Now earlier on this week you would have seen that I made some Get Well Soon cards using DSP. What I'm showing you now is that, you know, if you are purchasing a limited amount of stock, that you can just with 2 inks, a stamp set and a block, create your own DSP. This is such a therapeutic thing to do. I'll be returning to my workplace from the beginning of September, and I know that I'm going to be doing a lot of stamping after that because I'll need some time to unwind, and I'll be coming straight to my craft room, doing some craft, doing some stamping. Craft is a great mindfulness exercise when you're being creative after a busy day. Right, have I got any left? Oh, I've got one over there. Let's sort that one out and then we'll get this loaded up. Not sure what leaf I've got there. That one, I think. Oh, stamp off. And I think there was 1 or 2 on here that I didn't stamp off, so that one and that one. But it doesn't matter. It's just provided a little bit of, you know, a little bit of difference on there. That one, I wish I could hide that, but there we are. Never mind. I know it's there. When someone receives that card, they might not actually see that. Okay, so there we are. We've stamped that. Let's get everything loaded up. I've done so much crafting, so I've got stuff all over the place. I'm going to have a clear up after this one. So with some glue, we're just going to put this white cardstock Now I can't remember if at the beginning of this video I said all the measurements are on my blog. All the measurements are on my blog, along with all of the details of all of the products I've used. They go directly to my shop, where you can shop safely and securely. You order directly to Stamping Up and it's delivered directly to you. I get notified of your purchase and I'll send you a little thank you gift through the post. So we've got that, and then we're going to put that on there. This is liquid glue that I'm using. Highly recommend liquid glue if you are a beginner crafter. I've been paper crafting for 3 years and I still use liquid glue to do this, just because it's easier for me. So put that on there, got a nice board all the way around. Now, the sentiment that you put on the front of this is entirely up to you. If you are a regular viewer of mine, you will see that I put all sorts of things, circles and die cuts and or nothing, or you know, it's entirely up to you. What I want to show you are these stitched shaped dies, and they come 4 sizes in 3 different shapes. So we've got these ovals, these are the 2 biggest ovals, and there are 2 smaller ones, squares and circles. So they're great if you want to. You know that I use these circle punches quite a lot, but the stitch shape dies give you a little bit more versatility. So I'm going to die cut the biggest one in Old Olive and the smaller one in Whisper White, and then I'll stamp on that. So I'll go and die cut those now. Okay, so I'm back with my die cuts. I don't do that on camera because the die cutting machine is such a beast, and I can't get it all in shot. Stamping Up have a new die cutting machine coming out. They used to stock the Big Shot and they don't anymore. So they have their own. I don't have it. I'm not going to purchase one of those when I've got a perfectly functioning Big Shot. But if you are looking to do die cuts, which is so pretty to do, Stamping Up have one of those. So there's that, but I'm going to stamp on this first before I put this on my card. And this card as well, you could have it like that in landscape with that way. And I think because I've done one portrait, I'll do this one landscape. So let's stamp on this first, and I'm going to use this sentiment. I'm going to use the sentiment, blessed to know you. And my sentiments, they're over here. I lost them for a minute there. Now, the blessed sentiment is a big one. And to get to know you underneath it, we need to get this blessed as high as possible, but I don't want it to go over those stitched bits, if that makes sense. I'm going to stamp this in Old Olive, just so it matches the card. And I'm going to get that as high up as I can. I can't get my head right over this because obviously the camera's in the way. Hopefully that's worked. Oh yes, it did. And we've got this to know you, so I'm just going to hover that over here, and that's just going to sit in there. It just sits in there quite nicely. Just want to make sure I get that straight. And there you go. So using dimensionals, which we'll put on the back there. Now I'm going to fight to get the backing off. I'm just going to lay that over the centre like that and get that as central as I can. And this would be using this sentiment, just a note to somebody. If somebody's gone that extra mile for you, especially over this really difficult period of time that we still find ourselves in. I think no matter where you are in the world, you're being affected by what's going on in the world at the moment. It hasn't gone away, and sometimes there are people that have really helped you out, and I've got somebody in mind that I would give this to. So there we go, super easy stamping. If you've not stamped before, just give it a go and practice with it and see what you can do with the stamps. Everything you do will just look that slightly different, especially when you just change up the colour a little bit. So I hope you like that. I hope that's inspired you to get your stamp blocks out and your stamps and your inks, and just give it a go. We've got some really good stamp sets that lend themselves to doing lots of stamping. So there's Forever Fern, we've got this To a Wild Rose, and I'll show you some other stamp sets over the next few weeks which really lend themselves to doing some stamping like this. Thank you ever so much for joining me, and I'll be back again soon with another project. Bye bye.